The moment Jennifer Wilson heard Dr. Martinez's scream echo through the veterinary clinic, she knew something extraordinary had happened. What began as a routine delivery for her beloved Persian cat, Lily had transformed into an event that would change their quiet life in Cedar Grove forever. As the morning sun filtered through the clinic's windows, casting long shadows across the examination room floor, Jennifer watched the color drain from the experienced veterinarian's face. The first 4 kittens had arrived perfectly normal, but what emerged next left everyone in the room speechless. What did the skilled veterinarian see that made her react with such shock? And how would this mysterious kitten transform the lives of everyone in their peaceful Oregon suburb? Get ready for a tale of wonder, mystery, and discovery that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Before we delve deeper into this extraordinary story, take a moment to tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. Your connection to this amazing tale means everything to us, and we'd love to know which corner of the world you're joining us from. Spring had arrived early in Cedar Grove that year, painting the suburban landscape in vibrant shades of green and pink as cherry. Blossoms danced on gentle breezes. Jennifer spent her mornings working from her home office, her graphic design work frequently interrupted by Lily's increasing restlessness. The Persian cat's swollen belly had grown considerably over the past weeks, and her usually graceful movements had become careful and deliberate. Mark Wilson stood in their kitchen that morning, his coffee growing cold as he pored over the cat pregnancy guide Dr. Martinez had given them during their last checkup. His fingers traced the pages with the same careful attention he used while preparing his high school science lessons. "Jenny," he called out, his voice carrying a hint of concern. "It says here we need to monitor her breathing patterns. They might change when she's ready." Jennifer looked up from her laptop, watching Lily pace near her favorite window seat in their craftsman-style home. The morning light caught her luxurious cream-colored fur, highlighting the subtle changes in her body that signaled the approaching delivery. "I've been keeping notes," she replied, reaching for a small leather-bound notebook on her desk. Each page contained detailed observations of Lily's behavior over the past few days. The peaceful atmosphere of their home took on a different quality. That afternoon, as Lily's behavior shifted dramatically, she refused her favorite treats and began searching for quiet, dark spaces, investigating corners she'd never shown interest in before. Jennifer followed her beloved cat's movements with growing anticipation, her heart racing every time Lily paused or made the slightest sound. When Lily finally settled into the carefully prepared nesting box in their garden room, Jennifer knew it was time. Her hands trembled slightly as she dialed Dr. Martinez's number, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows through the room's large windows. The veterinarian's warm, professional voice brought immediate comfort. "Bring her in right away," Dr. Martinez instructed. "I'll be waiting." The drive to Evergreen Animal Clinic seemed longer than usual, though it was barely 10 minutes from their home. Mark navigated the familiar streets carefully, while Jennifer sat in the back seat with Lily's carrier, offering gentle words of reassurance. The Persian cat's usually bright eyes were filled with uncertainty, her cream-colored fur slightly ruffled despite her typically immaculate appearance. Inside the clinic, Dr. Martinez had prepared a special delivery room, its warm lighting and quiet atmosphere designed to keep Lily calm during labor. The veterinarian's experienced hands moved with practiced efficiency as she examined the cat, her dark eyes focused and alert. "Everything looks good," she assured them, her voice carrying years of professional confidence. "Lily's doing exactly what she should be." Tom and Karen Miller, their next-door neighbors, had offered to bring over any supplies they might need, and Jennifer could see their concerned faces through the clinic's front windows as they arrived with extra blankets and towels. The community's support wrapped around them like a warm embrace, even as the tension in the room continued to build. The first signs of active labor began just as the sun started to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Lily's breathing changed, becoming more rapid and focused, and Dr. Martinez positioned herself carefully, her movements calm and reassuring. Jennifer knelt beside the birthing box, one hand gently stroking Lily's head while the other held Mark's, fingers in a tight grip. When the first kitten arrived, everything proceeded exactly as expected. A tiny white ball of fur emerged, and Dr. Martinez quickly cleared its airways, checking its vitals before placing it near Lily's head. The second kitten, black as midnight, followed shortly after, then a ginger tabby, and finally a delicate grey one. Each arrival brought sighs of relief and joy from everyone in the room. Lily took to motherhood instantly, cleaning each tiny kitten with gentle dedication, her purrs filling the quiet room with contentment. The 4 kittens, still damp and tiny, began to nurse, their little paws kneading rhythmically as they sought comfort and nourishment. Jennifer and Mark shared a relieved smile, their faces glowing with pride as they watched their beloved cat care for her new family. The peaceful moment shattered as Lily tensed again. Dr. Martinez leaned forward, her experienced hands ready to assist with what should have been the final moments of delivery. As the 5th kitten began to emerge, her eyes widened behind her glasses, catching the light with a strange gleam. "My God," she breathed, her professional composure cracking for the first time that evening. If you want to discover what happened next and learn about the extraordinary events that followed this shocking moment, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the incredible developments in this remarkable tale. Leave a comment below, sharing your thoughts about what Dr. Martinez might have seen. And stay tuned for the next part of this amazing story. Evening shadows crept across the wooden floors of the Wilsons' craftsman home as Jennifer arranged Lily's new nesting area in their garden room. The space, with its wall of windows and abundance of potted ferns, had always been a peaceful retreat. But now it held an air of anticipation. Lily lay contentedly in her plush bed, her 5 kittens nestled against her warm fur, while Mark meticulously documented each newborn's measurements in his leather-bound notebook. The late spring rain tapped gently against the glass, creating a soothing rhythm that seemed to calm both mother cat and kittens. Jennifer's attention kept returning to Atlas, the 5th and most unusual kitten of the litter. Even at just a few hours old, his differences were striking. While his siblings, Snowball, Pepper, Ginger, and Shadow, were typical newborn kittens, barely the size of her palm, Atlas was notably larger, his fur already showing an iridescent quality that seemed to shift colors in different lights. Mark sat cross-legged on the floor beside the nesting box, his scientific mind struggling to make sense of what they were witnessing. As a high school science teacher, he'd always prided himself on being able to explain natural phenomena to his students, but Atlas defied every principle of feline development he knew. The kitten's movements were too coordinated for a newborn, his eyes already showing signs of opening when they should remain closed for at least another week. Sarah Chen, the owner of Cedar Grove's local pet shop, stopped by that evening with supplies. Her usual cheerful demeanor faltered as she caught sight of Atlas among his siblings. "In 20 years of working with cats," she whispered, setting down bags of premium kitten formula, "I've never seen anything like this." The unusual kitten turned his head at the sound of her voice, tracking her movement with an awareness that sent shivers down her spine. The Millers watched from their kitchen window next door as various visitors came and went from the Wilsons' home throughout the evening. Karen Miller's prized roses swayed gently in the spring breeze as she observed Dr. Martinez's car return for the 3rd time that day. The veterinarian's face etched with a mixture of professional curiosity and barely concealed concern. Inside the garden room, Dr. Martinez conducted another examination of the extraordinary kitten. Her hands moved with practiced precision, but her expression betrayed her amazement as she documented Atlas's rapid development. "His muscle density is remarkable," she noted, making careful entries in her medical journal. "And these markings, they're unlike anything I've encountered in any breed." The kitten's fur seemed to ripple with an inner light, creating patterns that shifted and changed like the surface of a soap bubble. While his siblings sported traditional solid or tabby patterns, Atlas's coat defied categorization. It wasn't just unusual, it seemed to respond to light and shadow in ways that shouldn't be possible. Jennifer watched as Atlas navigated purposefully around his littermates to find the best nursing position. Unlike his siblings, who crawled blindly and instinctively, his movements displayed a deliberate grace that seemed impossible for a newborn kitten. Lily showed no signs of distress at her unusual offspring, caring for him with the same maternal devotion she showed the others, though her eyes often followed his movements with particular attention. As night settled over Cedar Grove, preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The Wilsons' garden room became a tableau of domestic tranquility illuminated by soft lamplight. The normal kittens slept peacefully, their tiny bodies rising and falling with each breath, while Atlas remained awake, his extraordinary eyes reflecting the light like precious gems. The rain continued its gentle percussion against the windows, accompanied by the distant sound of wind chimes from the miller's garden. Mark found himself making detailed sketches of Atlas's unusual markings, his teacher's instinct driving him to document every detail. The patterns seemed to shift and change, even as he drew them, never quite the same from one moment to the next. Jennifer watched her husband work, recognizing the familiar crease in his forehead that appeared whenever he encountered something he couldn't quite explain. A text message illuminated Jennifer's phone. Dr. Martinez requesting permission to consult with a specialist. The veterinarian had contacted Dr. David Cooper, an expert in feline genetics who had studied unusual mutations in cats. His research facility in Portland might help them understand Atlas's extraordinary characteristics. The message carried an undertone of urgency that made Jennifer's stomach tighten with anxiety. Past midnight, as Mark finally set aside his notebook and prepared for bed, they heard an unusual sound from the garden room. It wasn't the typical mewing of newborn kittens, but a clear, musical tone that seemed to resonate through the house. They rushed to investigate, finding Atlas alert and vocal, while his siblings slept soundly. The sound he produced was unlike anything they'd ever heard from a cat, more like a crystalline bell than a feline vocalization. The following morning brought weak sunlight filtering through Oregon's characteristic cloud cover. Jennifer woke early, drawn to the garden room by an inexplicable sense of urgency. She found Atlas already active, his movements confident as he explored the edges of the nesting box. His siblings remained in their typical newborn state, eyes closed, movements limited to instinctive squirming as they sought their mother's warmth. Tom Miller was tending his wife's roses when he noticed something strange through the Wilsons' garden room windows. The unusual kitten appeared to be standing fully upright, balancing on his hind legs in a way that seemed impossible for a cat of any age, let alone a day-old kitten. He blinked and looked again, but Atlas had already returned to a normal position among his siblings. Tom shook his head, wondering if his eyes were playing tricks on him in the early morning light. Karen Miller joined her husband in the garden, carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "Have you noticed how many people have been visiting the Wilsons?" she asked, her voice hushed despite the privacy of their own yard. Dr. Martinez has been here 4 times already, and yesterday I saw someone who looked like that animal specialist from the university, the one they interviewed on the local news last month about big cat sightings in the area. The spring morning progressed with a steady stream of visitors to the Wilson home. Dr. Martinez arrived early, accompanied by Dr. Cooper, whose reputation in feline genetics had earned him the nickname the Cat Whisperer among his colleagues. The specialist's usually composed demeanor faltered visibly when he first observed Atlas. His hands trembled slightly as he made notes, his scientific detachment cracking in the face of something that challenged everything he thought he knew about feline development. "The rate of growth is unprecedented," Dr. Cooper murmured, comparing Atlas to his siblings. While the other kittens remained typically small and helpless, Atlas had already achieved the size of a 3-week-old kitten in just over 24 hours. His fur had developed from the downy fluff of a newborn into a luxurious coat that seemed to capture and reflect light in impossible ways. Jennifer watched the experts examine her extraordinary kitten, her heart filled with a mixture of pride and apprehension. She'd always wanted Lily's kittens to be special, but this level of attention, the barely concealed amazement in the specialist's eyes, made her wonder what the future might hold for Atlas and their family. As afternoon approached, Sarah Chen returned with more supplies and stayed to observe Atlas. Her years of experience with cats had given her an almost intuitive understanding of feline behavior, but Atlas left her speechless. The kitten displayed awareness and intelligence that seemed impossible for his age, responding to sounds and movements with precise attention, his eyes tracking conversations as if he understood every word. The garden room had become a strange mixture of scientific observation post and nursery. Dr. Martinez's medical equipment shared space with soft blankets and cat toys, while Dr. Cooper's sophisticated testing devices beeped softly in the corner. Through it all, Lily remained remarkably calm, allowing the examination of her kittens with unusual patience, though she kept a watchful eye on Atlas. Mark spent his lunch break between classes on the phone with Dr. Cooper, discussing possible explanations for Atlas's extraordinary development. Their conversation ranged from rare genetic mutations to environmental factors, but every traditional scientific explanation fell short of accounting for what they were observing. The kitten's physical development wasn't just accelerated, it seemed to follow patterns that defied natural law. As evening approached once again, Jennifer sat in her favorite chair in the garden room, watching Atlas interact with his environment. While his siblings remained in the typical newborn stage, nursing, sleeping, and making small, uncoordinated movements, Atlas explored his surroundings with purpose. His iridescent fur caught the last rays of sunlight, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the walls. The Millers hosted their weekly bridge night, but conversation kept drifting to their neighbor's unusual kitten. Karen described what she'd seen through the windows, while Tom shared his early morning observation. Their friends listened with growing curiosity, and soon the whole neighborhood was buzzing with speculation about the Wilsons' mysterious new addition. That night, as Mark updated his observation journal, a strange glow emanated from the garden room. He and Jennifer rushed to investigate, finding Atlas sitting in a shaft of moonlight, his fur seeming to absorb and reflect the silvery illumination in ways that transformed the entire room into a magical space. The other kittens slept peacefully, unaware of their extraordinary siblings' display. The day's events had left Jennifer and Mark exhausted, but unable to sleep. They sat in their kitchen, cups of chamomile tea growing cold as they discussed the implications of Atlas's unique nature. The sound of wind through the pine trees outside provided a gentle backdrop to their conversation, while distant owls called to each other in the darkness. "What do you think this means?" Jennifer asked softly, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. Dr. Cooper seemed both excited and concerned. "I've never seen a scientist struggle so much to maintain professional distance." Mark considered her, questioned carefully, his scientific mind wrestling with the impossible reality they faced. "I think," he said finally, "we're witnessing something unprecedented. Atlas isn't just unusual, he's something entirely new. The way he moves, those patterns in his fur, the sounds he makes. It's like he's operating under different natural laws than other cats." In the garden room, Atlas had positioned himself. Near the window, his extraordinary eyes reflecting the moonlight as he watched the nighttime world outside. His siblings dreamed kitten dreams, making small nursing movements in their sleep, while Lily curled protectively around them all, her maternal instincts encompassing both the ordinary and the extraordinary. The next morning would bring more observers, more tests, and more questions. But for now, in the quiet hours of the night, the Wilsons' home held its mysteries close. Atlas remained alert, his presence transforming their ordinary suburban home into something magical. While the spring night wrapped around them like a protective blanket, keeping their secrets safe until dawn. Dawn painted the Oregon sky in watercolor hues as a light mist settled over Cedar Grove. The morning dew clung to the window panes of the Wilsons' garden room, creating prisms that scattered rainbow light across the floor. Dr. Martinez arrived, early, her medical bag clutched tightly as she hurried through the dampness, her breath visible in the cool morning air. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Atlas had grown noticeably overnight, his form now resembling a 2-month-old kitten, despite being just days old. His iridescent fur had developed intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury, creating mesmerizing displays that defied explanation. The other kittens, Snowball, Pepper, Ginger, and Shadow, remained typically small and helpless, their eyes still sealed shut as nature intended. Dr. Martinez's hands moved methodically as she examined Atlas, her professional demeanor barely concealing her amazement. "His muscle structure has completely transformed," she murmured, making careful notes. "The density and development suggest capabilities far beyond normal feline parameters." She paused, watching as Atlas turned to face her directly, his extraordinary eyes seeming to pierce through her scientific detachment. The morning light strengthened, filtering through the misty air to illuminate the garden room in ethereal rays. Atlas moved with fluid grace to a patch of sunlight, his fur catching the light in ways that transformed the entire space. The walls seemed to shimmer with reflected patterns, creating an aurora-like display that left Dr. Martinez speechless, her pen frozen mid-note. Mark had taken a rare day off from teaching, unable to focus on physics lessons while such an extraordinary phenomenon unfolded in his own home. He sat cross-legged on the floor, sophisticated measuring devices spread around him as he documented Atlas's every movement. The kitten approached each device with obvious curiosity, examining them with an intelligence that seemed almost human. Sarah Chen arrived mid-morning with specialized food supplements, her expertise in feline nutrition driving her to ensure Atlas's unprecedented growth was properly supported. She stopped short in the doorway, gasping softly as she watched Atlas demonstrate an ability that defied all natural laws. The kitten appeared to be manipulating light itself, creating complex patterns of illumination that danced through the air-like living things. Jennifer worked at her desk nearby, attempting to focus on her graphic design projects, but her attention kept drifting to Atlas. The kitten had begun producing sounds unlike anything she'd ever heard, crystalline tones that seemed to resonate with the very air around them. His siblings remained contentedly ordinary, nursing and sleeping, while their extraordinary brother explored the boundaries of what seemed possible. Dr. Cooper arrived shortly before noon, his research team following with cases of specialized equipment. The renowned feline geneticist had barely slept, spending the night analyzing preliminary data from Atlas's first examinations. His excitement was palpable as he set up advanced scanning equipment, eager to unravel the mysteries of Atlas's unique genetic makeup. The afternoon sun broke through Oregon's characteristic cloud cover, sending sharp beams of light through the garden room windows. Atlas positioned himself deliberately in the strongest beam, and what happened next caused Dr. Cooper to drop his tablet in shock. The kitten's fur didn't just reflect the light, it seemed to gather it, concentrate it, and then release it in controlled bursts of pure radiance that filled the room with impossible colors. Karen Miller, tending her prized roses just outside, dropped her gardening shears as she witnessed the display through the windows. The light show was unlike anything in nature, more reminiscent of the northern lights than anything a cat should be capable of producing. She hurried inside to call Tom, who had just left for his afternoon golf game, unable to keep this latest development to herself. Dr. Martinez and Dr. Cooper huddled over their readings, speaking in hushed, excited tones. The data suggested that Atlas's cells had developed unique properties that allowed them to interact with light in ways that should be impossible. His muscle tissue displayed characteristics more commonly found in fiber optic cables than living matter, and his neural activity patterns resembled nothing they'd ever seen in any species. Lily watched her extraordinary offspring with typical feline composure, showing no sign that she found his abilities unusual. She groomed him just as she did her other kittens, though everyone noticed she spent extra time cleaning his luminescent fur, as if helping to maintain its mysterious properties. Her purring remained constant, a soothing counterpoint to the crystalline tones Atlas produced. Throughout the afternoon, various experts arrived to witness and document Atlas's abilities. A quantum physicist from the local university stood slack-jawed as she watched the kitten manipulate light in ways that defied known physical laws. A veterinary specialist in feline development could only shake his head in wonder as he observed Atlas's unprecedented growth and coordination. The garden room had transformed into an impromptu research facility, with sophisticated equipment lining the walls and experts from various fields taking careful notes. Yet despite the scientific scrutiny, Atlas maintained an air of mysterious serenity, his extraordinary eyes reflecting depths of awareness that seemed impossible for any animal, let alone a kitten just days old. Jennifer noticed that Atlas seemed to respond to human emotions in uncanny ways. When Dr. Cooper's frustration peaked over an equipment malfunction, Atlas approached him and created a gentle display of shifting lights that immediately calmed the agitated scientist. When Sarah Chen expressed worry about his nutritional needs, he demonstrated his health by performing a series of acrobatic movements that should have been impossible for a kitten of any age. As evening approached, Mark organized the day's data, his scientific training, struggling to reconcile what he'd observed with what he knew should be possible. Atlas had demonstrated abilities that went beyond mere biological advancement. He seemed to be operating under different physical laws entirely. The kitten's presence had transformed their understanding of what was possible in the natural world. The setting sun cast long shadows through the garden room, and Atlas began what appeared to be an evening ritual. He positioned himself centrally, among his siblings, his iridescent fur beginning to pulse with a soft, comforting glow. The other kittens, though still lacking sight, oriented themselves toward him, drawing comfort from his luminous presence. Lily curled around them all, her purring mixing with Atlas's crystalline tones in a strange but soothing harmony. Dr. Martinez prepared to leave for the night, her notes and observations threatening to overflow her medical bag. She paused at the door, watching Atlas create one final display of light and color, as if bidding her farewell. "In all my years of veterinary medicine," she said softly, I never imagined I'd witness something like this. He's not just unique, he's miraculous. Light. As darkness settled over Cedar Grove, the Wilsons' garden room glowed with a gentle radiance emanating from Atlas. The kitten had created what appeared to be a protective field of light around his family, the shifting colors casting soft shadows on the walls. His siblings slept peacefully within the illuminated space, while Lily watched with quiet pride as her extraordinary child demonstrated yet another impossible ability. The night brought a gentle rain, its rhythm on the windows creating a peaceful backdrop to the subtle light show within. Jennifer and Mark sat together on the floor near the nesting box, watching Atlas maintain his luminous vigil. The kitten's awareness seemed to extend to every corner of the room, his extraordinary senses alert to the smallest changes in his environment. Dr. Cooper's last message of the day flashed on Mark's phone. Preliminary genetic analysis suggested that Atlas's DNA contained patterns never before seen in any living creature. The implications were staggering, suggesting not just a mutation but something entirely new in the natural world. The message ended with a request to bring in more specialists, including experts in bioluminescence and quantum biology. The Miller's lights next door went out one by one, but curious faces still appeared occasionally at their windows, drawn by the mysterious glow emanating from the Wilsons' garden room. The neighborhood had become accustomed to unusual activities at the house, but the ethereal light show, visible through the windows, sparked new waves of speculation and wonder. Jennifer found herself unable to sleep, drawn back to the garden room, repeatedly throughout the night. Each time she checked, she found Atlas in a different position, always alert, always aware. His fur continued to shift and shimmer in the darkness, creating patterns that seemed to respond to her presence, adjusting their intensity and color to provide just enough light for her to move safely through the room. The night deepened, and Atlas's glow took on new properties, seeming to pulse in rhythm with the sleeping heartbeats of his siblings. The air in the garden room felt charged with possibility, as if the ordinary laws of physics had been temporarily suspended in this space. Even the raindrops on the windows seemed to catch and reflect Atlas's light in unusual ways, creating miniature light shows that danced across the glass. Mark made one final set of measurements before retiring, noting that the temperature around Atlas remained perfectly regulated despite the cool night air. The kitten had created a microclimate that kept his siblings at ideal temperature, another ability that defied natural law. The implications of such fine environmental control in a days-old kitten were staggering. As midnight approached, Atlas began emitting a new frequency of light, one that seemed to penetrate the very walls of the house. The garden room became a beacon in the quiet neighborhood, its gentle radiance visible from the street despite the curtained windows. A few late-night dog walkers paused to stare, drawn by the unusual illumination that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. The night wore on, and Atlas continued his vigilant watch over his family, his extraordinary abilities manifesting in ever more surprising ways. Each hour brought new discoveries, new mysteries, and new questions about the true nature of this remarkable creature who had entered their lives disguised as an ordinary kitten. The boundaries between the possible and impossible continued to blur in the gentle glow of Atlas's presence, as Cedar Grove slept under a blanket of spring rain, unaware that a miracle was unfolding in their midst. Morning mist clung to the windows of the Evergreen Animal Clinic as Dr. Martinez reviewed the latest test results from Atlas's examinations. Her hands trembled slightly as she spread the papers across her desk, each page revealing data that challenged everything she thought she knew about feline biology. The morning light caught the edges of the sophisticated imaging scans, highlighting structures within Atlas's developing body that defied conventional understanding. Jennifer and Mark sat across from her, their faces etched with a mixture of wonder and concern as they listened to the veterinarian's findings. Atlas, now the size of a 6-month-old cat, despite being less than a week old, sat perfectly still on the examination table. His iridescent fur rippled with waves of color that seemed to respond to Dr. Martinez's words, creating patterns that danced across the clinical white walls. His cellular structure is unlike anything we've ever seen, Dr. Martinez explained, pointing to a magnified image that showed Atlas's tissue samples. These formations here, they appear to be some kind of organic light-conducting matrices. They shouldn't be possible in living tissue, yet they're perfectly integrated into his system. She paused, watching as Atlas turned his extraordinary eyes toward the image, as if understanding her explanation. The sound of rain against the clinic's roof provided a gentle backdrop as Dr. Cooper joined them, carrying additional test results from his university laboratory. The feline genetics expert's usual professional composure had given way to barely contained excitement. "We've identified completely novel genetic sequences," he announced, spreading new documents across the desk. "They don't match any known feline DNA patterns. It's as if his genetic code has been expanded beyond what we thought possible." Outside the examination room, Sarah Chen waited with a specially formulated diet she had developed for Atlas. The pet shop owner's expertise in feline nutrition had been challenged by the unique needs of this extraordinary kitten. Through the window, she watched as Atlas created a display of light that transformed the sterile clinic room into something resembling an aurora borealis in miniature. The other clinic staff found excuses to pass by the examination room, each hoping to catch a glimpse of the remarkable kitten. Atlas acknowledged their presence with subtle changes in his luminescence, creating unique patterns for each observer. His awareness of his surroundings seemed to extend far beyond normal feline capabilities, encompassing not just physical space, but the emotions and intentions of those around him. Dr. Martinez's senior assistant entered with another set of test results, then froze in amazement as Atlas demonstrated a new ability. The kitten appeared to bend light around objects, creating what looked like small portals of pure radiance that revealed different perspectives of the room. The assistant dropped her clipboard, the clatter breaking the spell as Atlas calmly returned the light to its normal behavior. Jennifer reached out to stroke Atlas's fur, marveling at how it felt both solid and ethereal beneath her fingers. The kitten responded to her touch by creating a gentle pulse of warmth that spread through her hand and up her arm, bringing with it a sense of peace and connection. Mark watched in fascination, his scientific mind racing to understand the principles behind these impossible interactions. Dr. Cooper's specialized equipment beeped softly as it recorded new data about Atlas's energy emissions. The readings suggested that the kitten was not just manipulating existing light, but actually generating new forms of electromagnetic radiation. These emissions appeared to have properties that didn't align with any known part of the spectrum, existing in what should have been impossible wavelengths. As the morning progressed, more specialists arrived at the clinic, each bringing their own expertise and equipment. A quantum physicist set up sensitive instruments designed to measure subatomic phenomena, while a bioluminescence expert prepared to document Atlas's light-generating abilities. The small examination room had transformed into a sophisticated research space, filled with the quiet hum of advanced technology. Atlas moved through the forest of equipment with graceful precision, seeming to understand the purpose of each device. When the quantum physicist's instruments failed to capture certain measurements, the kitten adjusted his emissions to frequencies that could be recorded, displaying an understanding of scientific methodology that left the researchers speechless. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the windows with increasing force. Atlas responded to the changing weather by creating a subtle counterpoint of light patterns that somehow made the storm seem less threatening. His siblings, back at home with Lily under the watchful eye of Karen Miller, would still be nursing and sleeping, their development following the normal course of nature, while their extraordinary brother continued to defy it. Dr. Martinez carefully documented each new observation, her years of veterinary experience providing no framework for what she was witnessing. Atlas's physical development had progressed far beyond what should be possible, yet every system in his body appeared to be functioning in perfect harmony. His heart rate, temperature, and other vital signs followed patterns that suggested an entirely new form of biological organization. Sarah Chen's specialized food remained untouched as Atlas demonstrated yet another impossible ability. The kitten appeared to be drawing sustenance directly from the light itself, his fur absorbing and processing energy in ways that suggested photosynthesis, yet far more advanced than anything found in nature. Dr. Cooper rushed to document this phenomenon, his excitement barely contained as he theorized about the implications. The afternoon brought a brief break in the rain, sending sharp beams of sunlight through the clinic windows. Atlas positioned himself deliberately in one such beam, and the assembled scientists watched in amazement as he began to split the light into its component wavelengths, creating a spectrum that extended beyond the visible range. Their instruments recorded energy patterns that should have been impossible for any living creature to manipulate. Jennifer felt a subtle vibration through the floor as Atlas began generating new frequencies of energy. The kitten's fur now rippled with patterns that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions, creating visual effects that made the very air appear to fold and unfold around him. The quantum physicist's equipment registered readings that suggested Atlas was somehow manipulating the fundamental forces that held reality together. Dr. Martinez called in a colleague from the neurology department of the local hospital. The brain specialist arrived with portable imaging equipment, hoping to understand how Atlas's extraordinary abilities were controlled. As the kitten submitted calmly to the scanning process, the neurologist's professional demeanor cracked at the sight of neural patterns that suggested levels of consciousness far beyond what should be possible in any animal. Mark found himself drawing complex diagrams as he attempted to map the interactions between Atlas's various abilities. Each new demonstration seemed to connect to previous ones in ways that hinted at an underlying pattern, a grand design that remained just beyond their understanding. The kitten watched his efforts with apparent interest, occasionally creating light displays that seemed to complement or correct Mark's theories. The afternoon wore on as more tests were conducted, each revealing new aspects of Atlas's extraordinary nature. The kitten's patience seemed endless as he participated in every examination, his intelligent eyes following each researcher's movements with obvious comprehension. When complex calculations were needed, he would create patterns of light that somehow made the mathematics clearer, as if illustrating concepts that existed beyond normal human perception. Dr. Cooper's team arrived with genetic sequencing results that further complicated the mystery. Atlas's DNA showed signs of organization that suggested an intelligence behind its design, yet there was no evidence of artificial manipulation. It was as if nature itself had decided to explore new possibilities through this remarkable creature, breaking its own rules in the process. As evening approached, the clinic staff began preparing to close for the day. Atlas created a farewell display that transformed the entire examination room into a cathedral of living light, each beam and pattern moving in perfect harmony to create a symphony of color and radiance. The assembled scientists and medical professionals stood in reverent silence, aware that they were witnessing something that transcended their understanding of what was possible. Jennifer gathered Atlas into her arms for the journey home, feeling the gentle pulse of energy that constantly flowed through his extraordinary form. The kitten's fur shifted colors beneath her touch, creating patterns that seemed to respond to her emotions and thoughts. Dr. Martinez made arrangements for more specialized equipment to be delivered to the Wilsons' home, knowing that each day would bring new discoveries about their remarkable charge. The drive home through the quiet streets of Cedar Grove felt surreal after the intensity of the day's examinations. Atlas sat calmly in his carrier, his gentle glow providing more than enough light to illuminate the car's interior. Mark drove carefully, his mind still processing the implications of everything they had learned and the countless questions that remained unanswered. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant colors as they arrived home, its natural display somehow enhanced by Atlas's presence. The kitten's fur seemed to catch and amplify the twilight, creating an interplay of light and shadow that transformed their ordinary driveway into something magical. Karen Miller, watching from her garden, felt her breath catch at the sight of the luminous creature returning home. Inside, Lily greeted them with typical feline grace, showing no surprise at her extraordinary offspring's latest developments. The other kittens, still following their normal growth patterns, stirred at Atlas's approach, somehow sensing their remarkable siblings' presence. The garden room filled with a gentle radiance as Atlas resumed his position among his family, his impossible abilities now focused on nurturing and protecting his more vulnerable siblings. As night fell over Cedar Grove, the Wilsons' home glowed with a soft, otherworldly light that seemed to pulse with its own rhythm. Atlas had created a protective field of energy around the house, its patterns shifting and flowing like a living thing. Inside, the extraordinary kitten continued his vigil, his very existence challenging the boundaries between the possible and impossible, while his family watched in wonder, knowing that each new day would bring fresh mysteries to unravel. Thunder rolled across Cedar Grove as Jennifer paced the living room, her worried eyes fixed on Atlas. The extraordinary kitten had grown at an impossible rate overnight, now larger than his mother Lily. His iridescent fur pulsed with an inner light that seemed to intensify with each lightning strike, creating shadows that moved independently of natural law. Mark stood in the doorway of their home, phone pressed to his ear as he listened to Dr. Martinez's urgent voice. Strange readings from multiple sources, the veterinarian explained, her professional calm cracking. The electromagnetic disturbances around your house have attracted attention. Government researchers are asking questions. We need to be careful. The morning news played quietly on their television, featuring reports of unusual phenomena throughout the neighborhood. Gardens blooming out of season, electronics behaving erratically, and most concerning, unexplained lights in the night sky above their property. Sarah Chen arrived breathless, clutching a newspaper that featured a blurry photograph of their house surrounded by an ethereal glow. Dr. Cooper burst through the front door, his silver hair wild and eyes wide with excitement. "The genetic sequences we identified," he exclaimed, spreading papers across their coffee table. "They're not just unusual, they're organizing themselves into new patterns. Atlas isn't just growing, he's evolving in real time. Each hour brings new changes, new abilities. We've never seen anything like it." The other kittens huddled together in their bed, their ordinary features highlighting Atlas's extraordinary nature. While they remained typical weeks-old kittens, their unusual brother had developed features that challenged understanding. His eyes now contained swirling galaxies of color, and his movements left trails of light in the air that lingered like cosmic contrails. Karen Miller watched from her garden as strange lights danced through the Wilsons' windows. Her roses had begun growing in impossible patterns, blooming in colors that shouldn't exist in nature. The closer to the Wilsons' property, the more pronounced the effects became. Her prized flower beds now attracted curious botanists and researchers, all struggling to explain the inexplicable changes. Tom Miller's garage workshop had become ground zero for electromagnetic anomalies. His tools regularly rearranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns, and his electronic equipment displayed readings that defied explanation. The retired engineer spent hours documenting these occurrences, his scientific mind both thrilled and troubled by their implications. Inside the Wilsons' home, Atlas demonstrated new abilities that left even Dr. Martinez speechless. The kitten could now manipulate matter at a fundamental level, transforming ordinary objects into crystalline structures that hummed with inner light. Each creation pulsed with energy that registered on instruments designed to measure cosmic radiation. Local wildlife behaved strangely around their property. Birds formed perfect formations overhead, their songs taking on harmonic qualities that resonated with Atlas's own frequencies. Squirrels and rabbits gathered at their fence line, their eyes reflecting the same iridescent qualities that characterized the extraordinary kitten's fur. Dr. Martinez arrived for her daily checkup, this time accompanied by a quantum physicist from the State University. The scientists' equipment began malfunctioning the moment they approached the house, displaying readings that should have been impossible. Atlas watched their attempts to measure his abilities with what appeared to be amused interest. The kitchen became a makeshift laboratory as Dr. Cooper's team attempted to analyze Atlas's latest developments. The kitten had begun affecting the fundamental properties of matter around him. Water in glasses formed perfect geometric shapes, defying gravity. Metal objects vibrated in harmony with frequencies only Atlas could generate. Sarah Chen's pet shop had become a gathering point for people sharing stories about the strange occurrences in Cedar Grove. Each day brought new reports of unusual phenomena, all centered around the Wilsons' property. The pet shop owner found herself becoming an unofficial clearinghouse for information about the extraordinary kitten. Jennifer noticed that Atlas had started responding to thoughts before they were spoken. The kitten anticipated needs and actions, moving with purpose to address situations before they developed. His awareness seemed to extend beyond normal space and time, encompassing possibilities that hadn't yet manifested. Mark's attempts to document Atlas's abilities scientifically became increasingly challenging as the kitten's powers expanded beyond measurable parameters. Traditional instruments failed to capture the true scope of his capabilities, often short-circuiting or displaying impossible readings when exposed to his energy field. The afternoon brought new concerns as unmarked vehicles began appearing in the neighborhood. Dark-suited figures were seen taking photographs and measurements around the perimeter of their property. Dr. Martinez's warnings about government interest seemed to be manifesting sooner than expected. Atlas responded to the increased surveillance by creating a subtle distortion field around the house. Cameras pointed at their property began producing only blurred images, and electronic surveillance equipment failed to function within a certain radius. The kitten had effectively created a privacy shield using abilities that defied current technology. Lily maintained her remarkable calm in the face of her offspring's increasing powers. The mother cat treated Atlas no differently than his siblings, though she seemed aware of his special nature. Her purring took on unusual harmonics when near him, resonating with the strange energies he generated. As evening approached, the sky above their house began displaying aurora-like phenomena, despite their geographical location. Atlas appeared to be interacting with the Earth's magnetic field, creating displays of light that drew even more attention to their property. Amateur astronomers set up telescopes at the end of their street, documenting the impossible lights. The local news station attempted to interview Jennifer, but their camera equipment mysteriously malfunctioned within range of their house. Atlas's protective measures extended to all forms of unauthorized surveillance, maintaining their privacy. Through means that no human technology could overcome, Dr. Cooper's latest tests revealed something unprecedented. Atlas's DNA had begun influencing the genetic structure of plants and small organisms within his vicinity. The garden showed signs of accelerated evolution, producing hybrid species that shouldn't have been possible through natural means. The temperature around their property remained constant despite weather changes, maintained by Atlas's growing control over his environment. The kitten had created a microclimate that promoted optimal conditions for all living things within his sphere of influence. Plants flourished, insects buzzed with unusual vigor, and even the air itself seemed charged with vitality. As night fell, Atlas began his evening routine of creating protective fields around the house. The barriers now incorporated new elements that bent light and energy in ways that made the property appear normal to outside observers while maintaining their extraordinary internal environment. Jennifer and Mark sat in their living room watching Atlas demonstrate abilities that increasingly suggested consciousness beyond normal physical limitations. The kitten created displays of energy that seemed to map possible futures, showing them glimpses of events that hadn't yet occurred. The clock struck midnight as Atlas generated a new form of energy field that encompassed their entire property. Within this field, the normal laws of physics became mere suggestions, allowing for possibilities that challenged fundamental understanding of reality. Their home had become a nexus of transformation, centered around an extraordinary kitten whose true nature and purpose remained a growing mystery. Through it all, Atlas maintained his gentle demeanor, showing no sign that his increasing powers had affected his loving nature. He spent equal time protecting his family and playing with his siblings, his extraordinary abilities always tempered by seemingly ordinary feline behavior. Yet with each passing hour, the gap between what he appeared to be and what he was capable of continued to widen, leaving everyone to wonder what new marvels the next day would bring. Morning fog rolled through Cedar Grove as Dr. Martinez hurried toward the Wilsons' home, her breath visible in the crisp air. The neighborhood had changed subtly since Atlas's arrival. Gardens bloomed with unprecedented vigor, birds sang with newfound melody, and even the air itself seemed charged with possibility. Through the mist, she could see the gentle glow emanating from the Wilsons' garden room, where her most extraordinary patient continued to defy all natural laws. Inside, Jennifer sat at her desk, attempting to focus on her graphic design work, while Atlas demonstrated abilities that made her computer's display seem primitive by comparison. The extraordinary kitten had created what appeared to be living holograms that filled the air with three-dimensional images of impossible beauty. Each image seemed to tell a story of realities that existed beyond human perception. Tom Miller stood at his fence, coffee growing cold in his hands as he watched Atlas create patterns of light that danced across the morning sky. The neighbor had witnessed many unusual occurrences since the extraordinary kitten's arrival, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of small objects beginning to orbit around the Wilsons' home, caught in fields of energy that Atlas generated. With casual ease, Dr. Cooper arrived with new testing equipment, his team following close behind. The feline genetics expert had spent sleepless nights analyzing data that suggested Atlas's abilities were beginning to influence the fundamental forces of nature itself. Local gravity measurements showed unexplained fluctuations, and electromagnetic readings indicated the presence of energy patterns that shouldn't exist in nature. Sarah Chen's morning delivery of specialized food supplements was interrupted by the sight of Atlas creating what appeared to be miniature auroras throughout the garden room. The pet shop owner watched in amazement as the displays responded to music playing softly from Jennifer's computer, each note translated into waves of impossible color and light. The local news had begun picking up stories of unusual phenomena in Cedar Grove, Reports of enhanced plant growth, unexplained light displays, and mysterious energy fields had attracted attention from increasingly distant sources. Jennifer fielded constant calls from researchers and institutions eager to study the extraordinary kitten. Mark returned from his morning classes to find a small crowd gathered at the end of their driveway, drawn by the visible evidence of Atlas's latest abilities. The kitten had created a dome of pure energy that enclosed their property, its surface, rippling with patterns that seemed to respond to the thoughts and emotions of those nearby. Karen Miller's prized roses had grown to unprecedented size and beauty, their blooms shimmering with traces of the same iridescent quality that characterized Atlas's fur. The garden had become a point of pilgrimage for local botanists who struggled to explain the flower's extraordinary properties through conventional science. Dr. Martinez's examination revealed new developments in Atlas's physical form. The kitten's fur no longer seemed entirely solid, instead existing in a state between matter and energy that defied analysis. His eyes had developed new properties, appearing to see through multiple dimensions simultaneously. The other kittens had begun showing subtle signs of their extraordinary siblings' influence. Though still developing normally, they displayed unusual awareness and coordination for their age. Lily watched with maternal pride as Atlas created protective fields around his siblings, each barrier perfectly tuned to their individual needs. A quantum physics team from the State University arrived mid-morning, their sophisticated equipment detecting patterns of energy that suggested Atlas was manipulating the fabric of reality itself. The kitten observed their work with obvious interest, occasionally adjusting their instruments with precise applications of force that left the scientists speechless. Jennifer noticed that Atlas had begun creating what appeared to be temporary bridges between different points in space. The kitten moved through these shortcuts with casual grace, appearing simultaneously in multiple locations throughout the house. Each portal rippled with impossible colors and emitted frequencies that made the very air vibrate with potential. The afternoon brought new discoveries, as Atlas demonstrated an ability to influence electronic devices. Computers in the house began operating at impossible speeds, their displays showing information that seemed to come from somewhere beyond normal space-time. The kitten appeared to be upgrading their technology through direct manipulation of their underlying physical properties. Sarah Chen observed from her corner of the room as Atlas began communicating in ways that transcended normal understanding. The kitten projected images and concepts directly into the minds of those present, sharing visions of realities that existed beyond human perception. Each communication left the recipients with a deeper understanding of the universe's underlying patterns. Local wildlife had begun responding to Atlas's presence in unexpected ways. Birds perched on the energy dome surrounding the property, their songs taking on unusual harmonics that resonated with the kitten's own frequencies. Squirrels and rabbits gathered in the garden, drawn by energies that seemed to enhance their awareness and vitality. Dr. Cooper's team worked tirelessly to document the expanding scope of Atlas's abilities. The kitten had begun influencing weather patterns in the immediate vicinity, creating microclimates that promoted growth and harmony. Plants in the garden evolved rapidly, developing properties that reflected the extraordinary energies permeating the area. The setting sun cast long shadows across the garden as Atlas conducted what appeared to be experiments with the nature of reality itself. The kitten created miniature versions of cosmic phenomena, demonstrating principles that united the macroscopic and quantum realms in ways that challenged fundamental scientific assumptions. Tom Miller watched from his workshop as patterns of light and energy danced across the evening sky above the Wilsons' property. Atlas's influence had begun extending beyond the immediate vicinity, affecting the local environment in ways that promoted unusual growth and development in all living things. Jennifer and Mark sat together in the garden room, watching as Atlas created displays that seemed to bridge the gap between science and magic. The kitten had begun teaching them new ways of perceiving reality, demonstrating principles that existed beyond the boundaries of conventional understanding. As night fell, Atlas began his evening ritual of creating protective fields around the house. The barriers now extended beyond physical protection, incorporating elements that seemed designed to nurture and enhance the consciousness of all living things within their reach. The air itself seemed to shimmer with potential, carrying frequencies that promoted health and vitality. Dr. Martinez made final notes before departing, her scientific worldview forever altered by what she had witnessed. Atlas had shown them glimpses of realities that existed beyond human perception, suggesting that the universe was far more complex and interconnected than anyone had imagined. The stars wheeled overhead as Atlas maintained his vigil, his presence transforming the ordinary suburban home into a nexus of extraordinary potential. The boundaries between the possible and impossible continued to blur under his influence, suggesting that reality itself might be more flexible than anyone had imagined. The clock struck midnight as Atlas created one final display of transcendent energy, his consciousness reaching out to touch the minds of those around him with visions of possibilities that existed beyond the horizon of current understanding. The extraordinary kitten had become a bridge between the known and the unknown, suggesting that reality itself might be ready to evolve into something new and wonderful. Cedar Grove held its breath as Atlas's latest abilities manifested in increasingly public ways. The neighborhood had become a focal point for researchers and curiosity seekers drawn by reports of impossible phenomena. Jennifer fielded constant inquiries from media outlets eager to document the extraordinary events unfolding in their quiet suburb. Mark's colleagues at the high school had begun asking pointed questions about the unusual occurrences centered around his home. The science teacher struggled to explain phenomena that defied conventional physics, while his students showed increasing interest in the theoretical implications of Atlas's abilities. Dr. Cooper's latest genetic analysis revealed patterns that suggested Atlas's DNA was continuing to evolve in real time, adapting and expanding in ways that rewrote the rules of biological possibility. The kitten's physical form seemed to exist in a state of constant transformation, pushing the boundaries of what living matter could achieve. As midnight approached, Atlas began generating new frequencies that seemed to resonate with the fundamental vibrations of the universe. The garden room became a space where the ordinary laws of physics gave way to new possibilities, where consciousness and energy intertwined in ways that pointed toward evolutionary potentials that existed beyond current understanding. The night air carried the gentle hum of Atlas's energy fields, a sound that seemed to speak of realities that existed beyond human perception. The extraordinary kitten had become not just a marvel, but a messenger, suggesting that the universe held mysteries far deeper than anyone had imagined. Wind whipped through Cedar Grove as a sleek black helicopter circled silently overhead, its sophisticated sensors probing the extraordinary energy field emanating from the Wilsons' property. Inside their home, Jennifer clutched Mark's hand as they watched Atlas create defensive patterns of light that rendered their house invisible to advanced surveillance equipment. Dr. Martinez burst through their front door, her usually composed demeanor shattered. "Military researchers," she gasped, dropping her medical bag on the floor. "They've been monitoring the energy signatures. The electromagnetic disturbances have triggered national security protocols. They're mobilizing a research team." The morning newspapers lay scattered across their kitchen table, headlines screaming about unexplained phenomena in their quiet Oregon suburb. Local reporters had camped at the end of their street, cameras trained on their property, though Atlas's protective field rendered their equipment useless. Sarah Chen fought her way through the growing crowd, clutching documents that made her hands tremble. "These arrived at the shop this morning," she whispered, spreading official-looking papers across their counter. Government inquiries about unusual pet registrations, requests for surveillance footage, demands for customer records. They're trying to trace Atlas's origins. Dr. Cooper paced their living room, his silver hair wild as he gestured at readings from his latest tests. "The genetic modifications are accelerating," he explained, voice tight with concern. "Atlas's DNA isn't just evolving, it's rewriting the fundamental rules of biology. The implications are staggering and dangerous in the wrong hands." Karen Miller's garden had become a focal point for scientific investigation. Research teams in hazmat suits collected samples from her roses, which now exhibited properties more common to fiber optic cables than living plants. The flowers pulsed with internal light that matched the frequencies Atlas generated, creating a network of luminous beauty that defied natural law. Tom Miller's workshop instruments detected energy patterns that suggested Atlas was manipulating quantum fields at will. The retired engineer's oscilloscopes displayed waveforms that theoretical physicists had only dreamed possible, each reading confirming that the extraordinary kitten was operating beyond known physical limitations. Atlas moved through their home with increased purpose, his iridescent fur rippling with colors that existed beyond normal human perception. The kitten's eyes held depths that seemed to peer through multiple dimensions simultaneously, tracking threats and possibilities that existed outside conventional reality. The other kittens played near their mother, their ordinary behavior highlighting the profound nature of their siblings' differences. While they chased toy mice and batted at string, Atlas created intricate force fields that transformed their play area into a protected sanctuary where natural laws bent to accommodate their innocent games. Dr. Martinez's clinic had been swamped with calls from government agencies and research institutions, all demanding information about the extraordinary kitten. The veterinarian's records had been subpoenaed, though critical details remained safely encoded in the quantum encryption Atlas had created for their protection. Military vehicles maintained discreet positions around the neighborhood, their presence masked as utility trucks and delivery vans. Inside each, sophisticated monitoring equipment attempted to penetrate Atlas's defensive screens, their operators growing increasingly frustrated as their most advanced technology proved inadequate. The afternoon brought a visit from a stern-faced woman who introduced herself as Dr. Eleanor Richards, lead researcher for a classified government program. Her credentials seemed impeccable, but Atlas's reaction to her presence sent ripples of concern through his protective field. The kitten's fur bristled with energy as he positioned himself between the agent and his family. Jennifer noticed subtle changes in the air as Atlas reinforced their home's defenses. The kitten had begun weaving temporal distortions into his protective matrix, creating zones where time itself moved differently. Unauthorized visitors found themselves walking in endless loops, unable to reach their front door despite appearing to make progress. Mark's scientific background provided framework for understanding only a fraction of Atlas's capabilities. The kitten had evolved beyond conventional physics, demonstrating mastery over forces that human science had barely begun to theorize. Each new ability suggested access to knowledge that transcended current understanding. Sarah Chen's pet shop became a hub for resistance against growing government interference. The local community rallied around the Wilsons, sharing information and monitoring suspicious activities. Atlas's influence had awakened something protective in their neighbors, uniting them against external threats to their extraordinary resident. As sunset approached, Atlas began implementing new security measures. The kitten created quantum-entangled observation posts throughout the neighborhood, allowing him to monitor multiple locations simultaneously. Each point pulsed with energy that responded instantly to potential threats, forming an interconnected defense network. The evening news carried stories about unprecedented astronomical phenomena centered over Cedar Grove. Atlas's energy field had begun affecting weather patterns, creating artificial auroras that defied scientific explanation. Satellite imagery showed impossible electromagnetic formations that made military analysts nervous. Dr. Cooper's latest analysis suggested that Atlas's abilities weren't just advancing, they were propagating through the environment in subtle ways. Plants, animals, even the molecular structure of air and water showed signs of adaptation to his influence. The ordinary rules of nature seemed to be evolving around him. Jennifer watched as Atlas created a new form of communication network, linking their home to friendly observers throughout the neighborhood. The kitten established quantum connections that allowed instant, untraceable information exchange, coordinating their growing community of protectors with impossible efficiency. Lightning flashed across the evening sky as Atlas demonstrated another, impossible ability. The kitten began manipulating electromagnetic fields on a massive scale, creating defensive systems that rendered conventional surveillance technology useless. Military satellites reported unusual data gaps over Cedar Grove, their sophisticated sensors confused by forces they couldn't comprehend. Dr. Martinez arrived with urgent news from her medical contacts. Government facilities across the country had begun mobilizing resources, preparing for potential intervention. The extraordinary kitten's abilities had attracted attention at the highest levels, triggering protocols designed for unprecedented situations. Atlas responded to the growing tension by expanding his protective influence. The kitten's energy field now encompassed the entire neighborhood, creating a zone where he could monitor and control all incoming threats. Local wildlife adapted to his presence, becoming part of his early warning system. Karen Miller's gardens flourished under Atlas's protection, her plants developing properties that defied botanical science. Flowers bloomed with impossible colors, their petals incorporating crystalline structures that resonated with the kitten's energy frequencies. Each plant became part of his defensive network, sensing and responding to potential threats. The night deepened as Atlas implemented more sophisticated security measures. The kitten created quantum barriers that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, making conventional penetration impossible. His defenses operated on principles that human technology couldn't detect, let alone counter. Jennifer and Mark sat in their kitchen, drinking coffee gone cold as they discussed their options. Atlas had made their home impenetrable, but the growing attention from powerful organizations threatened their peaceful existence. The kitten's extraordinary abilities had placed them at the center of a situation that grew more complex by the hour. Dr. Cooper worked through the night, analyzing data that suggested Atlas's influence was spreading beyond their immediate vicinity. The kitten's energy field had begun affecting quantum probability fields, subtly altering reality itself to protect those under his care. Each new discovery pointed toward capabilities that transcended current scientific understanding. As midnight approached, Atlas initiated another phase of his defensive preparations. The kitten created temporal buffers around their property, zones where time moved differently for potential threats. Unauthorized observers found their equipment operating in time frames that made accurate observation impossible. The stars wheeled overhead as Atlas maintained his vigilant protection, his consciousness extending through multiple layers of reality simultaneously. The extraordinary kitten had transformed their quiet suburban home into a fortress that operated beyond conventional physical laws, securing their safety through means that no human agency could overcome. Local news stations reported increasing anomalies throughout Cedar Grove, though Atlas's influence prevented them from identifying the source. The kitten's protective measures had created a zone of mystery that attracted attention even as it defied investigation, leaving authorities frustrated and concerned. Sarah Chen's security cameras captured images of unmarked vehicles conducting late-night surveillance, though Atlas's defensive field rendered their sophisticated equipment useless. The pet shop owner coordinated with neighbors to maintain a network of ordinary observers, providing early warning of suspicious activities. Tom Miller's workshop became a monitoring station for tracking government activities around their neighborhood. The retired engineer's instruments, enhanced by Atlas's influence, detected patterns of surveillance that grew more sophisticated with each passing hour. The kitten's defenses adapted continuously, staying ahead of each new attempt at penetration. As the night progressed, Atlas demonstrated yet another impossible capability. The kitten began manipulating quantum entanglement on a massive scale, creating instantaneous communication networks that linked trusted neighbors and allies. Information flowed freely within his protective field, while remaining completely secure from external observation. The clock struck midnight as Atlas completed another layer of defensive preparations. The extraordinary kitten had transformed their neighborhood into a sanctuary where conventional rules of reality held less sway than his protective influence. Each new measure demonstrated mastery over forces that human science had barely begun to comprehend. Cedar Grove's community center buzzed with tense voices as residents gathered for an emergency meeting. Lisa Thompson, the community board president, struggled to maintain order as neighbors argued about the increasing strangeness affecting their quiet suburb. The morning sun cast long shadows through the windows, while concerned citizens shared stories of inexplicable occurrences centered around the Wilsons' property. Jennifer and Mark sat quietly in the back row, watching their neighbors gesture animatedly as they described gardens growing at impossible rates, electronics behaving erratically, and strange lights in the night sky. Atlas had remained at home with his siblings, though his protective influence extended invisibly throughout the neighborhood, monitoring the proceedings through quantum-entangled observation points. "My security cameras captured something impossible last night," declared George Anderson, the local hardware store owner. He projected a video showing luminous patterns dancing above the Wilsons' home, their ethereal beauty drawing gasps from the assembled crowd. These lights respond to movement, track suspicious vehicles, and seem to possess intelligence. What exactly is happening in our community? Dr. Martinez stood slowly, her professional reputation lending weight to her words. "What we're witnessing defies conventional explanation," she admitted, choosing her words carefully. "The phenomena centered around the Wilson residence represent capabilities beyond current scientific understanding. However, I can assure you that there's no danger to our community. In fact, quite the opposite." Sarah Chen rushed into the meeting, clutching a stack of photographs showing the extraordinary changes in local wildlife. Birds displayed unprecedented intelligence, forming complex patterns in the sky that mirrored Atlas's energy signatures. Squirrels and rabbits had developed iridescent fur that shimmed with familiar frequencies. Even insects seemed more organized, their movements suggesting collective purpose. Karen Miller's testimony about her transformed garden captured everyone's attention. Her roses had developed crystalline structures within their petals, each flower, becoming a node in an interconnected network that responded to Atlas's presence. "These aren't just plants anymore," she explained, passing around specimens that sparkled with inner light. "They've evolved into something entirely new, Outside the community center, unmarked vans maintained discreet surveillance positions, their sophisticated equipment rendered useless by Atlas's protective field. The extraordinary Kitten had extended his influence throughout Cedar Grove, creating safe zones where conventional monitoring technology simply ceased to function. Military observers grew increasingly frustrated as their most advanced systems failed to penetrate his defenses. Dr. Cooper arrived late to the meeting, his research team's latest findings clutched in trembling hands. The genetic specialist had discovered that Atlas's influence was subtly affecting the fundamental biology of everything within his protective sphere. Plants, animals, and even bacteria were showing signs of accelerated evolution, developing capabilities that shouldn't be possible. The afternoon sun climbed higher as debate intensified in the community center. Some residents expressed fear of government intervention, while others worried about the implications of having such extraordinary power centered in their neighborhood. Through it all, Jennifer and Mark listened silently, knowing that Atlas's true capabilities far exceeded even the wildest speculations being voiced. Tom Miller's presentation of electromagnetic anomalies recorded in his workshop silenced the room. His instruments had detected energy patterns that suggested Atlas was manipulating the fabric of reality itself, bending natural laws to create a protected space where his family and community could exist safely. The retired engineer's data confirmed what many had suspected. Their neighborhood had become ground zero for phenomena that defied scientific explanation. Lisa Thompson called for a vote on community response to the increasing government presence around Cedar Grove. The residents, despite their concerns about the strange occurrences, voted overwhelmingly to protect their extraordinary neighbor. Atlas's gentle influence had touched them all in subtle ways, awakening a collective desire to preserve the wonder that had entered their lives. As the meeting continued, Jennifer received urgent messages from Dr. Martinez's contacts within the scientific community. Research institutions across the country had begun mobilizing resources, eager to study the unprecedented phenomena centered in their suburb. Atlas's protective measures had already anticipated this response, creating barriers that operated beyond human understanding. The community center's windows suddenly filled with shifting patterns of light as Atlas extended his influence to include the gathering. The extraordinary Kitten created a direct quantum link to the meeting, allowing him to share carefully controlled demonstrations of his abilities. Residents watched in amazement as impossible colors danced through the air, forming images that spoke directly to their minds. Sarah Chen organized a neighborhood watch program with a difference. Volunteers would monitor government activities while Atlas's quantum network provided instant, secure communication. The pet shop owner had discovered that animals under her care developed heightened awareness when exposed to the Kitten's energy field, becoming natural allies in their community's defense. Dr. Cooper's team set up monitoring stations throughout Cedar Grove, tracking the expansion of Atlas's influence. The Kitten's energy field had begun affecting the quantum probability structure of their entire suburb, subtly shifting reality to create optimal conditions for growth and development. Plants flourished, animals thrived, and even the air itself seemed charged with vitality. Karen Miller's garden had become a gathering point for botanists and researchers, though Atlas's protective measures prevented any harmful investigation. The roses now responded to emotional states, blooming with colors that reflected the collective mood of the community. Each flower had become a living sensor in the Kitten's vast defensive network. The evening brought new concerns as military helicopters conducted high-altitude surveillance of Cedar Grove. Atlas responded by creating atmospheric distortion fields that made accurate observation impossible. The extraordinary Kittens defenses operated on principles that rendered conventional technology useless, while maintaining perfect transparency for trusted neighbors. Tom Miller's workshop instruments detected increasing attempts to penetrate Atlas's protective barrier. Government agencies had deployed their most sophisticated equipment, only to find their systems confused by forces that operated beyond known physical laws. The retired engineer worked with Dr. Cooper to document these attempts, building a database of defensive measures. As night fell, the community center meeting reached its conclusion. Residents left with a new sense of purpose, united in their determination to protect the extraordinary presence that had transformed their neighborhood. Atlas's influence had awakened something profound in Cedar Grove, a recognition that reality held more wonder than they had imagined. Jennifer and Mark walked home through streets that pulsed with subtle energy. Atlas's protective field had become visible to those who knew what to look for, its intricate patterns weaving through the neighborhood like strands of living light. The extraordinary kitten had created something unprecedented, a community where the impossible had become commonplace. Dr. Martinez worked late into the night, documenting the physiological changes appearing in Cedar Grove's residents. Prolonged exposure to Atlas's energy field had begun enhancing human awareness, allowing people to perceive aspects of reality that normally remained hidden. The veterinarian's research suggested they were witnessing the early stages of guided evolution. Sarah Chen's pet shop became a central point for monitoring unusual activities around their suburb. Animals brought for grooming or boarding displayed remarkable awareness, often alerting their owners to suspicious presences that Atlas's defenses had already detected. The pet shop owner coordinated with Karen Miller to create a network of enhanced botanical and zoological sensors. The midnight hour approached as Atlas implemented more sophisticated security measures. The extraordinary kitten's consciousness extended throughout Cedar Grove, monitoring multiple dimensions simultaneously. His protective influence had transformed their neighborhood into a sanctuary where conventional rules of reality held less sway than the power of collective wonder. Stars wheeled overhead as the community settled into its new normal, accepting the extraordinary presence that had chosen to make their suburb home. Atlas's gentle guidance had awakened them to possibilities beyond ordinary understanding, uniting them in appreciation of mysteries that defied scientific explanation. Cedar Grove had become a place where the boundaries between the possible and impossible dissolved, replaced by an acceptance of wonder that transformed everyday life into something magical. The morning sun cast sharp shadows through a thick layer of mysterious mist that had settled overnight across Cedar Grove. Dr. Eleanor Richards stepped out of a sleek government vehicle, her crisp suit contrasting sharply with the ethereal fog swirling around her ankles. A team of specialists followed, each carrying equipment designed to penetrate the extraordinary energy field that had transformed this quiet Oregon suburb. Inside the Wilson home, Jennifer watched through windows that rippled with subtle distortions as more official vehicles arrived. Atlas sat motionless on their bay window seat, his iridescent fur pulsing with deep purples and blues that reflected his heightened state of alertness. The extraordinary kitten's siblings played nearby, oblivious to the mounting tension as their brother prepared new defenses against the approaching threat. Dr. Martinez burst through their back door, her face flushed with urgency. "They've obtained federal clearance," she gasped, dropping a thick folder on their kitchen table. "The Department of Advanced Research Projects wants to establish a permanent observation post. They're claiming national security concerns over the unprecedented energy signatures emanating from Cedar Grove." Mark spread the documents across their counter, his science teacher's mind racing as he absorbed the implications. The papers detailed energy readings that exceeded anything previously recorded, along with satellite imagery showing impossible atmospheric phenomena centered above their property. Atlas watched the proceedings with intelligent eyes that seemed to peer through multiple layers of reality simultaneously. Sarah Chen's morning delivery of specialized cat food was interrupted by the sight of government agents establishing perimeter positions around the neighborhood. The pet shop owner clutched her tablet, using its Atlas-enhanced systems to alert their network of community observers. Within minutes, Cedar Grove's residents began implementing their practiced response protocols. Karen Miller's garden erupted in a symphony of crystal chimes as her transformed roses detected the presence of unauthorized surveillance equipment. The flowers' petals shifted from their usual iridescent shimmer to deep crimson, sending warning signals through the quantum-entangled network that Atlas had woven throughout their community. Tom Miller's workshop instruments recorded massive energy fluctuations as Atlas began strengthening his defensive measures. The retired engineer watched in amazement as new patterns emerged in his readings, suggesting the extraordinary kitten was operating on levels of reality that human science had barely begun to theorize about. Dr. Cooper arrived with fresh genetic analysis that made his hands tremble. The evolutionary changes are accelerating, he explained, spreading charts across the Wilsons' dining room table. Atlas isn't just advancing himself anymore, he's transforming the fundamental biological structure of everything within his sphere of influence. The implications are staggering. Lisa Thompson called an emergency gathering of the neighborhood council using the quantum communication network to avoid government surveillance. The community board president had received official notices demanding cooperation with federal authorities, but Atlas's influence had awakened something fiercer than fear in Cedar Grove's residents. The morning progressed as more government specialists arrived, their sophisticated equipment humming with frustrated energy as it failed to penetrate Atlas's protective field. The extraordinary kitten had created defenses that operated beyond conventional physical laws, rendering human technology useless against his quantum-enhanced barriers. Jennifer noticed subtle changes in the air as Atlas implemented new security measures. The kitten's consciousness expanded throughout their property, creating zones where reality itself seemed to fold and ripple. Unauthorized observers found their perceptions distorted, unable to maintain focus on anything within the protected space. Dr. Martinez's clinic became a hub of activity as she coordinated with other veterinary specialists who had detected similar genetic anomalies in animals across Cedar Grove. The transformed creatures showed unprecedented intelligence and awareness, forming a living defense network that responded instantly to Atlas's quantum signals. The afternoon sun struggled to penetrate the strange mist that continued to blanket their suburb. Dr. Richards attempted to approach the Wilson residence, only to find herself walking in endless loops that somehow always returned her to her starting point. Atlas had created temporal distortions that made direct intervention impossible. Sarah Chen's pet shop security systems, enhanced by Atlas's influence, detected sophisticated attempts to hack their community's communication network. The extraordinary kitten responded by implementing quantum encryption that operated outside normal computational parameters, ensuring their coordination remained secure. Karen Miller worked in her garden, apparently tending her roses, while actually monitoring the positions of government observers through her flowers' enhanced sensory capabilities. The plants had developed an intricate warning system, their crystalline structures resonating with frequencies that Atlas used to track potential threats. Tom Miller's instruments recorded increasing attempts to penetrate the quantum barrier surrounding Cedar Grove. Military-grade sensors probed for weaknesses, only to be confused by defenses that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensions. The retired engineer shared his readings with Dr. Cooper, documenting each failed attempt to breach Atlas's protection. As evening approached, Dr. Richards made another attempt to establish official contact with the Wilsons. Her team had deployed their most advanced technology, designed specifically to counter unknown phenomena. Atlas watched their efforts with careful attention, his extraordinary abilities easily staying ahead of human technological advancement. The community gathered in Sarah Chen's pet shop, using its Atlas-enhanced security systems to coordinate their response to increasing government pressure. The extraordinary kitten had provided them with communication methods that transcended normal limitations, allowing perfect coordination despite the authorities' attempts to isolate them. Dr. Martinez arrived with urgent updates from her medical contacts. More research teams were being mobilized, each equipped with increasingly sophisticated analysis tools. Atlas responded by evolving his defensive capabilities, staying several steps ahead of any potential threat to his family and community. The night sky above Cedar Grove filled with strange lights as Atlas demonstrated more of his extraordinary abilities. The kitten created atmospheric phenomena that confused satellite surveillance while enchanting the residents who had chosen to protect him. Each display reminded them of the wonder they were fighting to preserve. Jennifer and Mark watched from their living room as Atlas coordinated the community's defense through his quantum network. The extraordinary kitten had united their neighbors in ways they never expected, awakening them to possibilities that transformed their understanding of reality itself. Dr. Cooper worked through the evening, analyzing data that suggested Atlas's influence was creating sustainable changes in the local environment. The kitten's presence had initiated an evolutionary leap that spread through all living things within his protective sphere, advancing them toward something new and wonderful. The midnight hour approached as Atlas implemented his most sophisticated defensive measures yet. The extraordinary kitten's consciousness extended throughout Cedar Grove, creating a sanctuary where conventional rules held less sway than the power of collective wonder. Their community had become something more than a simple suburb. It was now a proving ground for possibilities that challenged human understanding. Stars wheeled overhead as the residents of Cedar Grove maintained their vigil, united in their determination to protect the extraordinary presence that had transformed their lives. Atlas's gentle influence had awakened them to realities beyond ordinary perception, teaching them that wonder was worth preserving, no matter the cost. Dawn crept over Cedar Grove as a convoy of black military vehicles silently entered the suburb, their engines muffled by advanced technology. Dr. Eleanor Richards stood at the command center established in an unmarked van, surrounded by monitors displaying impossible readings from the Wilson residence. The government scientist watched as her most sophisticated equipment failed to penetrate the mysterious barrier that had enveloped the entire neighborhood. Jennifer paced her kitchen, watching Atlas create new defensive measures that bent light and space around their home. The extraordinary kitten's fur radiated patterns never seen in nature, each pulse of energy strengthening the quantum shield that protected their community. Mark sat at their dining table, translating Atlas's energy signatures into scientific terms for Dr. Martinez's rapidly growing research file. Sarah Chen's voice crackled through the quantum-encrypted communication network Atlas had established throughout Cedar Grove. "Military personnel are positioning themselves at every intersection," she reported, her pet shop's enhanced security systems tracking each new arrival. "They're setting up some kind of energy containment equipment around the perimeter of our neighborhood." Dr. Cooper burst through the Wilsons' back door, clutching printouts that showed unprecedented changes in the local environment. "The quantum field density is increasing exponentially," he explained, spreading papers across their counter. Atlas isn't just defending anymore. He's transforming the fundamental structure of space-time within his sphere of influence. Karen. Miller's garden had become a symphony of crystalline harmonics as her transformed roses detected the military presence. The flowers, now evolved far beyond their original nature, formed a living sensor network that fed information directly into Atlas's defense grid. Each blossom pulsed within a light, their petals shifting through impossible colors as they tracked movement beyond their borders. Tom Miller's workshop instruments recorded massive energy fluctuations as Atlas implemented new protective measures. The retired engineer watched in amazement as reality itself seemed to fold and ripple around their community. His enhanced monitoring equipment showed patterns that suggested the extraordinary kitten was operating on levels of existence that human science couldn't comprehend. Dr. Martinez coordinated with a growing network of sympathetic scientists who recognized the importance of protecting Atlas from government intervention. The veterinarian's clinic had become a clearinghouse for data about the unprecedented evolutionary changes spreading through Cedar Grove. Every living thing within Atlas's influence showed signs of accelerated development towards something new and wonderful. Lisa Thompson organized the community's response from her position as Neighborhood Council President. The quantum network allowed perfect coordination between residents as they implemented plans to protect their extraordinary neighbor. Atlas had awakened something profound in Cedar Grove, a collective determination to preserve the wonder that had entered their lives. The morning sun reached its zenith as Dr. Richards initiated the first attempt to penetrate Atlas's defensive barrier. Advanced energy projectors hummed to life, their beams designed to disrupt any known form of electromagnetic field. The extraordinary kitten responded by shifting his protections into quantum states that existed beyond conventional physical laws. Jennifer watched through windows that rippled with distortion as military scientists attempted to analyze their home. Atlas had created zones of altered reality that made accurate observation impossible, leaving the most sophisticated monitoring equipment displaying nothing but contradictory data. The kitten's siblings played nearby, their ordinary activities highlighted by their brother's extraordinary defensive displays. Dr. Cooper's enhanced sensors detected new patterns emerging in Atlas's energy field. The quantum barrier had begun exhibiting properties that suggested consciousness beyond individual awareness. The extraordinary kitten had somehow linked the entire community into a collective quantum state that strengthened their shared resolve. Zara Chen's pet shop became a focal point for coordinating community resistance as residents gathered to share information through Atlas's secure network. Animals brought for care displayed unprecedented awareness, their evolved senses perfectly attuned to the extraordinary kitten's protective frequencies. Each creature contributed to the community's defense in its own unique way. Karen Miller worked seeming to tend her garden while actually monitoring military positions through her flowers' enhanced capabilities. The roses had developed sensory abilities that operated beyond normal physical limitations, providing perfect surveillance of everything occurring outside Atlas's protective field. Their crystalline structures resonated with frequencies that the extraordinary kitten used to track potential threats. Tom Miller's workshop became a command center for analyzing attempted breaches of their quantum barrier. His instruments, enhanced by Atlas's influence, recorded each failed attempt to penetrate the extraordinary kitten's defenses. The retired engineer coordinated with Dr. Cooper, documenting evidence of capabilities that transcended known science. The afternoon brought new attempts to establish communication as Dr. Richards deployed quantum entanglement devices designed to bypass conventional barriers. Atlas responded by shifting his entire protective field into states of reality that operated outside normal space-time, rendering even the most advanced human technology useless. Jennifer felt subtle vibrations through the floor as Atlas implemented another layer of defense. The extraordinary kitten had begun manipulating gravity itself, creating localized fields that made direct approach impossible for unauthorized visitors. Military personnel found themselves unable to maintain position, their equipment affected by forces they couldn't detect or measure. Dr. Martinez arrived with urgent updates from her scientific contacts. The government had mobilized its most advanced research teams, each equipped with technology designed specifically to counter unknown phenomena. Atlas's response was to evolve his protective abilities beyond anything human science could anticipate or understand. The evening sky above Cedar Grove filled with impossible colors as Atlas demonstrated more of his extraordinary capabilities. The kitten created atmospheric phenomena that confused satellite surveillance while enchanting the residents who had chosen to protect him. Each display reminded them of the wonder they were fighting to preserve. Sarah Chen's enhanced security. Systems detected sophisticated attempts to hack their community's quantum network. Atlas responded by implementing new forms of encryption that operated outside normal computational parameters, ensuring their coordination remained perfect despite increasing external pressure. Dr. Cooper worked through the night, analyzing data that suggested Atlas's influence was creating sustainable changes in local spacetime. The extraordinary kitten's presence had initiated a transformation that spread through the very fabric of reality within his protective sphere, advancing their community towards something entirely new. The midnight hour approached as Atlas implemented his most sophisticated defensive measures yet. The extraordinary kitten's consciousness extended throughout Cedar Grove, creating a sanctuary where conventional rules held less sway than the power of collective wonder. Their community had become something more than a simple suburb. It was now a proving ground for possibilities that challenged human understanding. Stars wheeled overhead as Cedar Grove's residents maintained their vigil, united in their determination to protect the extraordinary presence that had transformed their lives. Atlas's gentle influence had awakened them to realities beyond ordinary perception, teaching them that wonder was worth preserving, no matter the cost. Moonlight filtered through swirling mists as Dr. Eleanor Richards studied holographic displays. Inside the mobile command center, her team had deployed their most advanced quantum detection systems around Cedar Grove, yet the readings made no sense. The extraordinary energy field protecting the suburb seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, defying every known law of physics. Inside the Wilson home, Jennifer watched Atlas create impossible geometric patterns in the air, each shimmering form, strengthening the barriers that kept their community safe. The extraordinary kitten's fur had begun emitting pulses of light that moved backward through time, warning them of threats before they manifested. His siblings slept peacefully nearby, their dreams touched by gentle frequencies that brought only peace and wonder. Dr. Martinez rushed into their living room, her face pale in the ethereal light. "They're preparing something massive," she whispered, spreading classified documents across their coffee table. "The military has authorized the use of experimental quantum disruption technology. They believe they can collapse Atlas's protective field, but they don't understand the consequences." Mark studied the technical specifications with growing concern. As a science teacher, he recognized the theoretical principles behind the government's planned intervention. The frequencies they intended to use could potentially shatter the delicate quantum lattice Atlas had woven throughout their neighborhood, with unpredictable effects on the evolved ecosystem their community had become. Sarah Chen's enhanced surveillance network detected unusual energy signatures as military technicians assembled their equipment around Cedar Grove's perimeter. The pet shop owner coordinated with Karen Miller, whose crystalline roses had begun resonating with warning frequencies. Atlas's defensive grid hummed with anticipation, preparing countermeasures for threats that existed outside normal space-time. Tom Miller's workshop instruments recorded massive quantum fluctuations as the extraordinary kitten strengthened his protective field. The retired engineer worked with Dr. Cooper to analyze the readings, their enhanced equipment suggesting that Atlas was implementing defenses that operated beyond the boundaries of conventional reality. Lisa Thompson activated the community's emergency response protocols through the quantum-encrypted network. Cedar Grove's residents moved with practiced precision, taking positions throughout the neighborhood as living components of Atlas's defensive grid. The extraordinary kitten had transformed them all, awakening sensitivities and awareness that made them perfect partners in preserving their sanctuary of wonder. The night air crackled with potential as Dr. Richards initiated the first phase of the government's intervention plan. Advanced quantum generators powered up, their frequencies designed to unravel the mysterious energy field that protected the suburb. Atlas responded by shifting his entire defensive network into quantum states that existed outside the range of human technology. Jennifer felt reality ripple around them as the extraordinary kitten implemented new protective measures. Atlas had begun manipulating the fundamental forces that held space-time together, creating zones where conventional physics simply ceased to function. Military equipment shut down as its underlying quantum structure shifted into patterns that defied normal operation. Dr. Cooper's enhanced sensors detected unprecedented changes in the local environment as Atlas's influence intensified. The quantum barrier protecting Cedar Grove had evolved beyond its original parameters, becoming a living entity that responded instantly to every attempted breach. The extraordinary kitten's consciousness extended through multiple dimensions, maintaining perfect awareness of all potential threats. Sarah Chen's pet shop became a nexus of resistance as residents gathered to coordinate their response through Atlas's secure network. Animals brought for shelter displayed impossible awareness, their evolved senses perfectly attuned to the extraordinary frequencies that protected their community. Each creature contributed to the collective defense, their consciousness linked. Through quantum entanglement, Karen Miller worked in her garden under cover of darkness, her transformed roses providing perfect surveillance of military positions. The flowers had developed capabilities that transcended normal biological limitations, their crystalline structures resonating with frequencies that Atlas used to track and counter potential threats. The midnight hour approached as Dr. Richards deployed the government's most sophisticated quantum technology. Energy beams designed to penetrate any known barrier converged on the Wilson residence, their frequencies calculated to disrupt Atlas's protective field. The extraordinary kitten responded by shifting the entire neighborhood into quantum states that existed beyond human comprehension. Jennifer watched through windows that rippled with distortion as military scientists attempted to breach their sanctuary. Atlas had created zones of altered reality that made direct intervention impossible, leaving the most advanced human technology useless against defenses that operated outside normal physical laws. Dr. Martinez coordinated with sympathetic scientists who recognized the importance of protecting Atlas from government intervention. The veterinarian's clinic had become a clearinghouse for data about the unprecedented evolutionary changes spreading through Cedar Grove. Every living thing within the extraordinary kitten's influence showed signs of development towards something wonderful and new. The stars overhead seemed to pulse in rhythm with Atlas's defensive measures as he implemented another layer of protection. The extraordinary kitten had begun manipulating gravity itself, creating localized fields that made direct approach impossible for unauthorized visitors. Military personnel found themselves unable to maintain position, their equipment affected by forces they couldn't detect or measure. Sarah Chen's enhanced security systems detected sophisticated attempts to penetrate their quantum network. Atlas responded by implementing new forms of encryption that operated outside normal computational parameters, ensuring their community's coordination remained perfect despite increasing external pressure. Dr. Cooper worked through the night, analyzing data that suggested Atlas's influence was creating sustainable changes in local space-time. The extraordinary Kitten's presence had initiated a transformation that spread through the very fabric of reality within his protective sphere, advancing their community towards something entirely new. The midnight hour approached as Atlas implemented his most sophisticated defensive measures yet. The extraordinary Kitten's consciousness extended throughout Cedar Grove, creating a sanctuary where conventional rules held less sway than the power of collective wonder. Their community had become something more than a simple suburb. It was now a proving ground for possibilities that challenged human understanding. Stars wheeled overhead as Cedar Grove's residents maintained their vigil, united in their determination to protect the extraordinary presence that had transformed their lives. Atlas's gentle influence had awakened them to realities beyond ordinary perception, teaching them that wonder was worth preserving no matter the cost. First light touched the horizon as Dr. Eleanor Richards received the final authorization from her superiors. The military scientist stood amid a forest of advanced quantum technology, each device humming with frequencies designed to penetrate Atlas's protective field. The morning mist swirled with unusual patterns, carrying traces of energy that defied conventional analysis. Inside their home, Jennifer and Mark watched Atlas create one final display of transcendent beauty. The extraordinary Kitten's fur radiated pure light as he looked at them with eyes that held infinite understanding. His consciousness touched their minds gently, sharing visions of possibilities that existed beyond the horizon of human comprehension. Dr. Martinez burst through their door, breathless with urgent news. The government had mobilized its most powerful quantum disruption systems, preparing to unleash forces that could shatter the delicate balance Atlas had created throughout Cedar Grove. The veterinarian's face showed deep concern as she explained the potential consequences of such intervention. Sarah Chen's enhanced surveillance network detected energy signatures that made her equipment overload. Military technicians had assembled devices unlike anything seen before, their power sources pulsing with ominous potential. The pet shop owner coordinated with their neighbors through Atlas's quantum network, sharing information that grew more concerning by the moment. Tom Miller's workshop instruments displayed readings that made the retired engineer step back in shock. The frequencies being generated by military equipment threatened to destabilize the very fabric of space-time within their community. Atlas responded by implementing protective measures that operated beyond conventional physics, creating barriers that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Karen Miller watched her crystalline roses flash urgent warnings as dawn approached. The evolved plants detected massive energy buildups around Cedar Grove's perimeter, their transformed structures resonating with frequencies that spoke of imminent danger. Atlas acknowledged their warnings, his consciousness extending through every living thing in their sanctuary. Dr. Cooper arrived with final analysis that confirmed their worst fears. The military's quantum disruption technology could potentially unravel the extraordinary evolution Atlas had initiated throughout their community. The genetic specialists' enhanced equipment showed patterns suggesting their entire neighborhood had become something new and precious, worth protecting at any cost. Lisa Thompson coordinated the community's response through Atlas's secure network, ensuring every resident understood what was at stake. Cedar Grove had been transformed into something wonderful, a proving ground for possibilities that transcended ordinary understanding. The neighborhood council president's voice carried determination as she rallied their collective resolve. The morning sun rose fully as Dr. Richards initiated the government's final intervention protocol. Advanced quantum generators powered up. Simultaneously, their combined frequencies designed to pierce any known energy field. Atlas watched these preparations with serene awareness, his extraordinary consciousness already extending beyond the boundaries they sought to breach. Jennifer felt reality shift around them as Atlas made his decision. The extraordinary kitten had grown beyond the need for physical form, his presence touching every atom of their transformed community. His siblings watched with unusual awareness as their remarkable brother prepared to transcend the limitations of conventional existence. Dr. Martinez's instruments recorded changes that defied scientific explanation as Atlas began his final transformation. The extraordinary kitten's physical form dissolved into pure energy, merging with the quantum field he had created throughout Cedar Grove. His consciousness remained present in every flower, every animal, every evolved element of their sanctuary. Sarah Chen's pet shop became a focal point of incredible energy as Atlas's transformation reached completion. Animals displayed unprecedented awareness, their evolved senses perfectly attuned to the extraordinary frequencies that now permeated their community. Each creature carried a spark of Atlas's transcendent consciousness, ensuring his protective influence would endure. Karen Miller's garden erupted in impossible colors as the military activated their quantum disruption devices. The transformed roses channeled Atlas's energy, creating defensive patterns that turned the government's own frequencies back upon themselves. Each flower became a nexus of protective force, preserving the wonder their extraordinary neighbor had brought into their lives. The morning air filled with shimmering patterns as Atlas's consciousness merged completely with Cedar Grove's quantum field. Military equipment shut down as reality itself shifted around their community, transforming their suburb into something that existed partially outside normal space-time. The extraordinary kitten had evolved beyond physical form, becoming one with the sanctuary he had created. Dr. Richards watched in amazement as her sophisticated technology failed to penetrate the transformed neighborhood. Atlas had created something beyond human comprehension, a community where enhanced evolution could proceed without interference. The military scientist recognized the futility of further intervention, signaling her teams to stand down. Jennifer and Mark felt Atlas's presence in the gentle breeze that carried impossible colors through their garden. The extraordinary kitten's consciousness touched them one final time, sharing visions of the wonderful future he had made possible. His physical form had transcended, but his influence would continue shaping their community in subtle, beautiful ways. Dr. Martinez documented the final readings as Cedar Grove settled into its new state of existence. The veterinarian's enhanced equipment showed stable patterns, suggesting their community had achieved a sustainable level of evolutionary advancement. Atlas's transformation had ensured their sanctuary would endure, protected by forces that operated beyond conventional understanding. Sarah Chen's security systems adjusted to the new quantum frequencies that permeated their neighborhood. The pet shop owner recognized that Atlas's consciousness remained present in every evolved creature, guiding their continued development with gentle wisdom. Their community had become a living testament to possibilities that transcended ordinary limits. Tom Miller's instruments recorded the final energy signatures as military forces withdrew from Cedar Grove's perimeter. The retired engineer understood that Atlas had given them something precious, a place where wonder could flourish without interference. His workshop would continue monitoring their community's extraordinary development, documenting marvels that defied conventional explanation. The stars emerged as evening approached, their light seeming to dance with new energy above Cedar Grove. Atlas's consciousness touched each resident one final time, leaving them with understanding that transcended ordinary awareness. Their community had become something magical, a sanctuary where evolution could proceed in beautiful, unexpected ways. If you enjoyed this extraordinary tale of wonder and transformation, you're in for a treat. 2 more incredible stories await your discovery, right here on your screen. Don't miss out. Click to experience more amazing adventures that will captivate your imagination.